The message came at 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time. It wasn't the first signal from space that Dr. Emma Collins had received at NASA's Deep Space Communications Center, but it was the first one that made her coffee mug slip from her fingers and shatter on the floor. "This can't be right," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the computer screen. The signal was clear, too clear. Natural space phenomena didn't produce patterns this precise. Her hand shook as she began running the decryption protocols. The night shift was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the clicking of keyboards. Through the large windows of the control room, Emma could see the massive satellite dishes outside, all pointing toward the same patch of sky. They had been searching for signs of alien life for decades, but nobody really expected to find anything. Until now. The decryption program beeped, and Emma leaned forward. Letters began appearing on her screen. 2. Earth. URGENT. Danger A Pro HEGES. Time limited. Rome. VRX Cow Sile. Emma reached for the red phone on her desk, the one that connected directly to her superiors. Within an hour, the center was buzzing with activity. Scientists in rumpled clothes rushed in, called from their beds. Military officials in crisp uniforms strode through the halls. Everyone gathered in the main conference room as more of the message was decoded. "The Vraks aren't here to hurt us," Emma explained to the room full of nervous faces. She stood at the front, pointing to the translated message on the big screen. "They're warning us about something else, something called the Nexus Empire." General Parker, a stern-faced man with gray hair, leaned forward. "And we're supposed to trust these Vraks." Emma played the visual part of the transmission. The room fell silent as they saw the Vraks for the first time. Tall, elegant beings with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. The alien speaker's voice had been translated by their computers. "People of Earth, we have watched your development for centuries. We regret that our first contact must come with such grave news. The Nexus Empire approaches your sector of space. They are a collective of conquered species, forced to serve their masters. They offer two choices to all civilizations they encounter: join or die." The room erupted in questions, but Emma raised her hand for silence as the message continued. "We cannot help you directly. The Nexus is too powerful, and our people have chosen neutrality to survive. But we can warn you. You have approximately 18 of your Earth months before they arrive. Their technology is far beyond yours. They have conquered 37 civilizations more advanced than yours." General Parker's face had turned pale. "This has to be a joke, some kind of hoax." But Emma shook her head. "The signal came from 147 light-years away. We've confirmed it. No human technology could have sent this." The Vrak's message wasn't finished. "However, your species has something we have never seen before. Your neural patterns are different, resistant. This may be significant. We will send technical data to help you prepare, but we must be careful. If the Nexus discovers our interference, our own people will suffer." The room had gone completely quiet. On the screen, the Vrak speaker's large eyes seemed to look directly at them. "We are sorry we cannot do more. Most species submit to the Nexus without fighting. Some try to fight and are destroyed. None have succeeded in resisting. But perhaps you will be different." The transmission ended, but the data kept coming. Designs for weapons, shield technology, star maps, and details about Nexus tactics all poured into their computers. It was like being handed a university degree while drowning. Helpful, but overwhelming. Emma looked around the room. Some people were crying. Others looked angry. A few seemed to be in shock. But she noticed something else too: a hardening of expressions, a straightening of backs, a determination in their eyes. General Parker stood up. "Get me the President and the UN. All of them." He turned to Emma. "Dr. Collins, how long will it take to verify this data?" "A few hours for the basics, days for the technical details." She paused. "Sir, what are we going to do?" The general looked out the window at the rising sun. "We're going to do what humanity does best, Doctor. We're going to prove them wrong." He turned back to the room. "They think we'll either submit or die. Well, I say we give them a third option." As Emma rushed back to her computer to continue decoding the Vrax data, she couldn't help but smile. The general was right. Earth had been given a death sentence, but something in the room had changed. There was fear, yes, but there was also determination. Humanity had just been challenged. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was beating impossible odds. Major Robert Hayes stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Command, watching hundreds of workers build the massive training facility below. Just 6 months ago, this had been an empty field in Colorado. Now it was humanity's best hope for survival. "Major, you need to see this." Lisa Martinez rushed into his office, her dark hair messy from working long hours in the weapons lab. She carried a tablet that glowed with blue light. "We did it. The plasma technology from the Vrax data. We got it working." Robert smiled. Lisa had been working nonstop since the warning came. At just 28, she was the youngest lead engineer in the program, but she had earned her position. While others said the alien technology would take years to understand, she had promised to do it in months. "Show me," he said. They walked quickly through the underground facility. Soldiers from every nation trained together in the halls. Robert saw Chinese troops practicing alongside Americans, Russians working with British engineers, Iranian scientists collaborating with Israeli researchers. The Nexus threat had done what nothing else could. It had united Earth. In the testing range, Lisa picked up what looked like a normal rifle. "Watch this," she said, aiming at a steel target. She pulled the trigger. The burst of blue energy shot out, leaving a hole melted clean through the metal. "That's just the beginning," Lisa said excitedly. "The power cells last 10 times longer than we expected. And look," she pressed a button, and the weapon folded into half its size. "Perfect for the guerrilla tactics you're planning." Robert nodded, but before he could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Emergency meeting in command," the voice announced over the speakers. "All section leaders report immediately." In the command center, screens showed news from around the world. Underground cities were being built at record speed. Military bases were being converted into bunkers. Space stations were under construction in orbit. Dr. Emma Collins was already there, looking worried. "We just decoded more Vrax data," she said as Robert and Lisa sat down. "It's about the Nexus control technology. They use it to take over the minds of conquered species. But..." She paused, showing them brain scan images. "Look at this." Lisa leaned forward. "The patterns are different." "Exactly," Emma said. "Human brains process information differently than any species the Vrax have encountered. We're naturally resistant to Nexus control. Not immune, but resistant. It takes them much more effort to control us." Robert felt a spark of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. "So we have an advantage." "A small one," Emma agreed. "But we'll need more than that." The room grew quiet as General Parker entered. His face was grim. "We just lost contact with our outer solar system sensors," he announced. "They're coming earlier than we expected. We have 2 months, maybe less." The news hit the room like a physical blow. 2 months instead of 6. Not enough time. But Robert noticed something strange. Instead of panic, he saw determination on the faces around him. Lisa immediately pulled out her tablet, muttering about weapons modifications. Emma was already calling her research team. Others were pulling up plans, making calls, adjusting strategies. "Listen up," Robert said, standing. "We all knew this was coming. Maybe not this soon, but we knew. Every person in this room represents a nation that, just a year ago, might have been ready to fight each other. Now, look around. We're working together, training together, planning together." He walked to the center of the room. "The Nexus thinks they'll find an easy target, a primitive species they can conquer or destroy. Instead, they're going to find something they've never faced before, a united humanity that refuses to kneel. Lisa stood up too. The plasma weapons will be ready. We'll rush production. The bunker cities can hold our people, another officer added. Not comfortably, but they'll survive. And we understand their technology better than they know, Emma said. Thanks to the Vrax. Robert looked at the tactical display showing Earth's defenses. Not enough time, not enough weapons, not enough of anything, except determination. 2 months, he said firmly. Then we show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. He turned to General Parker. Permission to begin Operation Firestorm, sir. The general nodded. Granted. And Major Hayes. He paused. Make it hurt. Around the world, humanity prepared for war. They had wanted 6 more months but would make do with 2. They had wanted more weapons but would fight with what they had. They had wanted more time to train but would learn in battle instead. The Nexus was coming to find an easy conquest. They were going to find something very different instead. Commander David Wilson gripped his captain's chair as the first Nexus ships appeared near Mars. They were massive, each one bigger than the largest cities on Earth. Their black hulls seemed to swallow the light from the sun, making them look like holes in space. All ships, battle formations, he ordered. His voice was calm, even though his heart was racing. The United Earth fleet spread out behind Mars, hidden in the planet's shadow. They had only one chance to surprise the enemy. 30 Nexus ships detected, his sensor officer reported. They're launching smaller vessels. David nodded. Everything was happening just as the Vrax had warned. The Nexus always started with a show of force, expecting their targets to surrender immediately. Launch our drones, David commanded. Thousands of small, unmanned ships shot out from behind Mars. They were Lisa Martinez's latest creation. Tiny but deadly, packed with plasma weapons. The Nexus ships turned to face this first attack, probably expecting an easy victory. They were wrong. The drones split into smaller groups, moving in patterns that no alien computer could predict. Human pilots, controlling them from safely behind Mars, used video game skills that they'd practiced their whole lives. The Nexus ships fired their weapons, but they couldn't hit what they couldn't predict. First wave of drones making contact, the weapons officer announced. Plasma torpedoes away. Blue fire bloomed in space as the drones struck. 2 Nexus ships exploded, their huge forms breaking apart. The others quickly moved into defensive positions. They're sending a transmission. Emma Collins's voice came through the command channel. She was back on Earth, coordinating communications. They're asking who we are. They sound surprised. David allowed himself a small smile. Tell them who we are. Tell them humanity says hello. But there was no time for more talk. The Nexus ships launched hundreds of fighters. The real battle was about to begin. All ships, execute Operation Firestorm, David ordered. Remember your training. The Earth fleet emerged from behind Mars, smaller than the Nexus ships, but faster and more agile. They'd spent months practicing for this moment, learning to use their size to their advantage. Space lit up with weapons fire. Human ships darted between the larger Nexus vessels, hitting them from all sides. Years of action movies and space games had prepared human pilots for this kind of fighting. They treated the massive enemy ships like boss battles in a video game, looking for weak points and exploiting them. Sir, his tactical officer shouted, they're trying to use their control technology. This was the moment they'd feared. The Nexus was attempting to take over their minds, to turn them into slaves like they had done to so many other species. But humanity had prepared for this. Dr. Rachel Cooper's neural protection devices, based on humanity's natural resistance, blocked most of the attack. It wasn't perfect. Some crew members cried out in pain, and a few ships stopped responding. But it wasn't the easy victory the Nexus had expected. Push forward, David ordered. Concentrate fire on their command ship. The battle raged for hours. Earth ships fell, their crews giving their lives to protect their home. But for every human ship lost, they took a Nexus vessel with them. The space around Mars became a graveyard of broken ships and shattered dreams. Finally, after what seemed like forever, the remaining Nexus ships began to retreat. They'd lost nearly half their fleet to what they'd thought would be an easy conquest. "They're sending another message," Emma reported, her voice tired but happy. They say they've never seen anything like this. No species has ever fought back so effectively. The cost had been terrible. Thousands of brave men and women had died in the battle. But humanity had done what no other species had managed. They'd won their first battle against the Nexus. As David looked at the aftermath of the battle, his communication officer spoke up. "Sir, we're getting signals from across the galaxy. Other species. They're watching. They saw what we did." "Good," David said firmly. "Let them watch. Let them see that the Nexus can be fought. Let them see that humanity doesn't bow to tyrants." He stood up, looking at his tired but proud crew. This was just the first battle. The Nexus will be back, and they'll be angry. But now, they know what we can do. Now they know that Earth isn't just another easy target. As cleanup operations began and rescue ships moved to save survivors, news of the victory spread across Earth. In bunker cities and military bases, humans celebrated their first victory. They had stood against the impossible and won. The Nexus would return, everyone knew that. But humanity had shown the galaxy something important. Sometimes the smallest dogs bite the hardest. Dr. Rachel Cooper stared at her computer screen, her eyes red from lack of sleep. For 3 weeks straight, she had been studying brain scans of humans who had resisted the Nexus-controlled signals during the Battle of Mars. There was something there, something important, but she couldn't quite see it. "You need to rest," Lisa Martinez said, bringing her a cup of coffee. The weapons engineer had been working in the lab next door, improving her plasma weapons. Rachel shook her head. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the screen. "When the Nexus tried to control our pilots, their brains did something unusual. It's like our minds fight back naturally." She pulled up 2 brain scans side by side. "This is a normal human brain." She pointed to the left image. "And this is what it does when hit with Nexus control signals." The right image showed patterns of bright activity, like a fireworks display. Lisa leaned closer. "That's not just resistance," she said slowly. "That's more like a counterattack." Rachel finished. She sat up straighter, suddenly wide awake. "What if we could amplify this? Turn our natural defense into a weapon?" The next few days were a blur of activity. Rachel's lab filled with volunteers, pilots, soldiers, and civilians willing to test her theories. Each person reacted differently to the recorded Nexus signals, but they all fought back in their own way. Major Robert Hayes visited the lab to check their progress. "Tell me you have something," he said. "The Nexus is regrouping. Our spies say they're bringing a bigger fleet." Rachel smiled tiredly. "We have something better than just defense," she said. She pointed to a small device on the table. It looked like a simple headband. "We can now broadcast human neural patterns." "And that helps us how?" Robert asked. Lisa picked up the device. "The Nexus controls other species by overwhelming their minds," she explained. "But human minds fight back. If we broadcast our neural patterns, we can disrupt their control over their slaves." Rachel finished. "Maybe even free them." The news spread quickly through the Earth Defense Command. For the first time, they had a weapon that could do more than just destroy. They could liberate. Commander David Wilson's voice came through on the main screen. He was leading the defense fleet near Jupiter. "The Vracs just sent us new intelligence," he said. "The Nexus isn't just angry about losing the battle. They're scared. No one has ever threatened their control over their slaves before." "Good," Robert said firmly. "They should be scared." Rachel's team worked around the clock to produce more neural disruptors. They made them in different sizes, small ones for individual soldiers, larger ones for ships and huge ones for planetary defense. One evening, as they were testing the devices, they received an unexpected message. It came through channels the Vracs had shown them, but it wasn't from the Vracs. It was from members of enslaved species fighting against their Nexus controllers. "Your resistance gives us hope," the message said. "When you fought back, their control weakened. Some of us broke free. We are hiding, but we are waiting. Show us how to fight." Rachel read the message twice, then looked at her team. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore," she said quietly. "We're fighting for everyone they've enslaved." That night, Commander Wilson gave a speech to all Earth forces. His words were broadcast across their communication channels, and somehow they reached further into space than they'd expected. "The Nexus thought they could control us like they controlled others," he said. "They thought we would kneel or die trying to fight. But humanity doesn't work that way. We've spent our entire history fighting against those who would control us. Freedom isn't just what we want. It's what we are." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "And now we discover that our very minds are weapons against their control. They tried to enslave us, but instead, we'll show every species they've enslaved how to break free. They wanted to add us to their collection of conquered worlds. Instead, we'll be the fire that burns their empire down." As Wilson spoke, Rachel watched her neural pattern monitors. Each person listening to the speech showed the same pattern: determination, courage, and something uniquely human: hope against impossible odds. The Nexus had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just attacked another species, they'd attacked humanity. And humanity had decided to do more than just defend itself. They were going to bring freedom to the galaxy, one liberated mind at a time. Lieutenant John Foster knew this might be his last mission. His small stealth ship, painted with the darkest material humans had ever made, slipped silently through enemy space. Behind him, 20 other ships followed, each carrying brave volunteers. "This is crazy, you know that, right?" his co-pilot whispered. They were so deep in Nexus territory that they had to keep their voices down, even though sound couldn't travel in space. It just felt right to whisper. John nodded. They were heading for what the Vracs intelligence called a control hub, a massive space station where the Nexus coordinated their slave armies. No one had ever attacked one before. Most species didn't even know they existed. "Signal from Earth," his communication officer said softly. "Lisa Martinez says the Prometheus protocol is ready." The Prometheus protocol was humanity's biggest secret weapon yet. Lisa had worked with Dr. Rachel Cooper to combine their technologies, a virus that could spread neural disruption through the Nexus's own control networks. But to use it, they had to get inside the control hub. "All ships, final check," John ordered through the secured channel. "Remember, we only get one shot at this." They had trained for months in virtual reality simulations, practicing every move. The Vracs had provided the station's layout, and Earth's best gamers had helped design their attack plan. Suddenly, the control hub appeared ahead of them. It was enormous, a dark metal sphere surrounded by rings of smaller structures. Thousands of ships docked at its ports, most of them crewed by enslaved species. "Approaching target," John said. "Activate cloaking." Lisa's newest invention covered their ships in a field that bent light around them. It wouldn't last long, but it didn't need to. They just needed to get close enough. They were halfway to the station when alarms started blaring. "They'd spotted us," someone shouted. "Stick to the plan," John ordered. "Full speed ahead." Their ships shot forward as enemy fighters poured out of the station. The humans had known they'd be detected eventually. Their plan counted on it. "Launch disruptors," John commanded. Each ship fired special pods that released Rachel's neural disruption signals. As the pods spread out, confusion spread through the enemy fleet. Enslaved crews began fighting against their Nexus controllers. "Docking team, go." John's ship led 5 others toward a maintenance airlock while the rest of the human fleet engaged the enemy, creating chaos. Inside the station, They met both resistance and unexpected help. Some enslaved crew members, freed by the disruptors, helped them fight against the Nexus forces. John led his team through dark corridors, following the path they'd memorized. Control center ahead, his tactical officer reported. Heavy resistance. John pulled out a special weapon, one of Lisa's prototype plasma rifles. Then let's give them something to remember us by. The battle for the control center was fierce. Humans fought alongside newly freed aliens against Nexus troops. John saw species he'd never seen before, all fighting together for freedom. Finally, they'd reached the central computer. John pulled out the device containing the Prometheus protocol. "Lisa, we're in position," he reported back to Earth. "Uploading now." Lisa's voice came through. "John, good luck." The device connected to the Nexus systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then screens started flashing, and alarms blared even louder. "It's working." Rachel's voice joined the channel. "The neural disruption is spreading through their network." Throughout the station, more and more enslaved species broke free. The Prometheus protocol was spreading to other control hubs, carrying human neural patterns across the Nexus empire like a virus of freedom. "All ships, begin evacuation," John ordered. They had to leave before the station's systems completely failed. As they fought their way back to their ships, John saw something amazing. Freed aliens weren't just fighting. They were taking control of their own ships, turning against their former masters. His team barely made it back to their vessels as the control hub began breaking apart. The Prometheus protocol had done more than they'd hoped. It had completely destroyed the Nexus's ability to control their slaves. As they fled back toward Earth space, John watched hundreds of ships follow them, not in pursuit, but in liberation. Former slave species, now free, were choosing to follow humanity. "Earth Command," he reported, his voice tired but proud. "Mission accomplished. And we made some new friends." The suicide mission had become something else, the beginning of a revolution. Humanity hadn't just broken into the control hub. They had broken the chains that held countless species in slavery. The real war was just beginning. Major Robert Hayes stood in the largest room of Earth's Space Command Center, surrounded by beings from 20 different alien species. Just a month ago, these races had been enslaved by the Nexus. Now they were Earth's allies, thanks to Lieutenant Foster's mission and the Prometheus protocol. "The Nexus has lost control of 40% of their territory," a tall, blue-skinned alien named Kex reported. His people, the Iridians, had been slaves for 300 years before humanity freed them. But they're gathering their loyal forces for a final stand. Emma Collins stood at the main display, showing the latest intelligence from their Vrax allies. The Vrax had finally chosen a side, impressed by humanity's success. "Their main fleet is gathering here." She pointed to a cluster of red dots. "They're protecting something important." "Their central control world," Lisa Martinez added. She had been working with alien engineers, combining their technologies. "Everything we've learned suggests this is where their leadership hides." The room erupted in discussion. Some aliens spoke through translators. Others used universal sign language that Emma had helped develop. Robert watched with pride. Humanity hadn't just resisted the Nexus. They had united the galaxy. "Order, please," Robert called out. The room quieted. "We've learned something crucial from our newest allies." He nodded to a small green-skinned being who had once been a Nexus data processor. The alien stepped forward nervously. "The Nexus leaders, they are afraid," it said in broken English. "Not just of losing power, they fear what comes after." "They should be afraid," Kex growled. Many other former slaves nodded in agreement, but Robert raised his hand. "This isn't about revenge," he said firmly. "This is about freedom. All of us, working together, can build something better than the Nexus ever did." Commander David Wilson's face appeared on the main screen. He was leading the combined fleet exercises near Saturn. "The alien ships are learning our tactics quickly," he reported. Their technology combined with our strategies. We're stronger together than any of us were alone. Show them the numbers, Lisa said excitedly. Emma brought up new displays. Look at this. Each species brings different strengths. The Iridian's energy shields, Talaxian stealth systems, Vrak's quantum computers. Combined with human neural disruptors and plasma weapons, we're creating the most powerful fleet ever seen. Robert looked around the room. For too long, the Nexus kept us divided. Species were either conquerors or slaves, with a few hiding in neutrality. But humanity showed there's another way. Together, we're not victims or conquerors, we're allies. More screens lit up, showing fleets gathering from across the galaxy. Former slave species, inspired by Earth's example, were rising up everywhere. Even some of the neutral species were joining them. The Liberation Alliance, Kex said proudly. It was the name they had chosen together. Born on Earth, but fighting for everyone. Dr. Rachel Cooper rushed into the room, holding new data. We've done it, she announced. Working with Iridian scientists, we've found a way to permanently block Nexus control signals. No one can ever be enslaved by them again. The room burst into cheers. Robert saw many aliens touching their heads, where they once had worn Nexus control devices. Then it's time, Robert said. All eyes turned to him. The Nexus is gathering their forces. They think they're preparing for a final battle to keep their empire. But we're going to show them something they've never seen before, a galaxy united against them. He turned to Commander Wilson's screen. How long until the fleet is ready? 24 hours, Wilson replied. Every ship, every species, fighting as one. Robert looked at the tactical display. Their combined fleet was enormous, the largest gathering of ships in known history. But it wasn't just the ships that made them strong. It was what they were fighting for. Send the message to all Alliance forces, he ordered. In 24 hours, we take the fight to their doorstep. The Nexus thought they could keep enslaving species forever. Instead, they created the force that will destroy them by bringing us all together. As the aliens and humans in the room prepared for the coming battle, Robert watched them working side by side. The Nexus had spent thousands of years building an empire of fear and control. Humanity had needed just 1 year to show the galaxy a better way. The final battle was coming. The Liberation Alliance was ready. The largest fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace near the Nexus central world. Commander David Wilson stood on his bridge, watching as thousands of ships from dozens of species moved into formation. At the front, Earth's ships led the way. Nexus fleet detected, his sensor officer reported. They've gathered everything they have left. All ships, battle positions, David ordered. His voice carried across the Alliance fleet. Remember why we're here. Not for revenge, but for freedom. The Nexus central world hung in space before them. A massive planet covered in metal and machines. This was where their leaders had hidden while sending slaves to fight their wars. This was where it would end. Lieutenant John Foster's voice came through the command channel. Strike team ready, Commander. He and his team were aboard a stealth ship, carrying an improved version of the Prometheus protocol. Their mission was to infiltrate the central control facility, while the fleet kept the Nexus forces busy. Dr. Cooper, status? David asked. Neural disruption network is green, Rachel replied from her position on Earth. Every Alliance ship is protected. They can't control us anymore. The Nexus fleet moved first, launching waves of ships. But something was different this time. Their movements were stiff, mechanical. Without slaves to crew their ships, they were relying on automated systems. They're afraid to face us themselves. Kex observed from his Iridian battleship. Typical. All ships, execute attack pattern Earth, David commanded. It was a fighting style that had never been seen before, combining human unpredictability with alien technology. The battle erupted across space. Alliance ships moved in formations that looked like chaos but were carefully planned. Lisa Martinez's weapons blazed across the void, while Iridian shields flickered and Talaxian ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "Strike team, you have your opening," David called. "Go." John Foster's stealth ship slipped through the battle, followed by a small team of elite ships from various species. They had trained together for this moment, each bringing their own skills to the mission. The battle raged for hours. Ships exploded, heroes died, but the Alliance pushed forward. The Nexus forces fought desperately, but they couldn't match the power of free peoples fighting together. "We're in." John's voice crackled through the comm. "Central facility breached. Beginning upload." David watched his tactical display as John's team fought their way through the Nexus command center. This was the moment everything depended on. Suddenly, a new voice broke through all communication channels. It was the Nexus leaders, speaking directly for the first time. "You cannot do this," they said, their voice cold and mechanical. "Order must be maintained. Species must be controlled. It is the only way." David smiled grimly. "You still don't understand," he replied, knowing his words were being broadcast to every ship in the battle. "Control isn't order. Unity isn't slavery. Humanity didn't free these people. We just showed them they could free themselves." Prometheus protocol uploaded. John shouted. "Rachel, light it up." Rachel Cooper, working from Earth with alien scientists, activated the final version of their weapon. It wasn't just a virus anymore. It was the combined mental strength of every free species, broadcast through the Nexus's own network. The effect was immediate. The Nexus ships stopped firing. Their central world's defenses went dark. Centuries of control and domination ended not with a bang, but with a quiet shutdown. "All ships, cease fire," David ordered. The battle ended as quickly as it had begun. From the central facility, John's team reported their findings. The Nexus leaders, beings who had hidden behind slaves and machines for so long, had flowed into escape pods. But they didn't matter anymore. Their power was broken forever. Hours later, as Alliance ships began the work of securing the central world, David received a message from Major Hayes back on Earth. "Well done, Commander," Hayes said. "The Vrax just contacted us. Other species, ones that stayed neutral. They're asking to join the Alliance. They say—" He paused, smiling. "They say humanity showed them what real strength looks like." David looked out at the ships working together. Humans, Iridians, Talaxians, Vrax, and dozens of other species. Former slaves and former neutrals, now all allies. "We didn't just win a war today," he said quietly. "We built something new, something better." Across the galaxy, the news spread. The Nexus had fallen. The Liberation Alliance had won. And it had all started because one small species on a distant planet had refused to kneel. Humanity had brought the fire of freedom to the stars. Now they would help build a galaxy where no one would ever need to stand alone again.